Thank you for that warm reception. I'm Kirk McCombs. I'm Doug's oldest brother. And we are so happy that all of you could be with us tonight to celebrate the life and memory of Doug. I want to thank the management of Smith's Old Bar for making this space available. As far as I know, it was Doug's favorite place to play in all the world. I remember being here, lucky enough, being here one night when the Gracie Moon played a set. And at the end of the set, Holly announced that Doug and Lori were expecting Miles Vaughn McCombs, who is here tonight as well. A lot of you know Miles and may not have ever seen him or seen him recently, and he cannot deny that Doug was his father, and Doug cannot deny that Miles was his son. We regret that Doug's mother, our mother, Sarah Carson, was not able to come tonight. She is living in a nursing home in Jacksonville, and she sends her love to everyone in this room, and she also joins us in thanking you for coming to be with us. I certainly don't take credit for Doug's music ability, but I am going to take credit for driving him back and forth to his first guitar lessons. He was so stoked. He was a 12-year-old who had found something that really excited him. To my knowledge, those early lessons were about the only lessons he ever had. He was a very quick study of other famous guitar players, and as most of you know, his heroes included Stevie Ray Vaughan, which is why we had the excerpt there on the video. I'd like to recognize Holly, Kenny, and Phil, who with Doug were Gracie Moon. And I think it touching and awe-inspiring that you were all able to come out tonight. I'm just going to say a couple more words. There is one other person that I'd like to recognize, and that is Chris Murphy. Chris and his family took Doug in and made him part of their family. And for those of you who don't know, Doug's day job for the last few years was working for Chris's company in technical support or software support. Our father, Pop, would have been so proud because he was a computer programmer. And he spent large portions of his time at Needleheads, which is the name of the company, talking to strangers on the phone and solving their problems, or helping to solve their problems. Well, for those of you who don't know, back in about 2004, Doug came to Jacksonville, and it became clear that I needed help in my law firm. My law firm was getting more and more busy with more and more complex cases and more clients. And part of Doug's job helping me was client management. And at one point, we had almost 2,000 clients in mass tort environmental litigation. And Doug's, of course, had never seen the inside of a law office before, but he handled the assignment with aplomb, and I'm positive that that experience helped him to offer the tremendous support that he did through his job with Chris's company. I'll close by saying that members of the family want to pay respects on the microphone. And one of the reasons we chose this place is because Kenny assured us that there would be ample room for anyone in this room who wanted to give tribute to Doug's life and memory to do so. So I'm going to, at this point, ask Holly if she would please sing Amazing Grace, and then we will continue with the remarks of the family, immediate family, and then we will open it up to anyone who would like to say a word or two. Holly, are you okay with that?
Hi, everybody. It's been a long time since I've been on this stage. Give me a minute. Miles, this is for you. I love you. Amazing grace, how sweet thy sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now I am found. And I was blind, but 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils and snares, I have already come. 'Twas grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me. Oh, she's gonna lead me home. No amazing grace, how sweet that sound that saved a wretch like me. Come on, everybody. I once was lost, but now I am found. I was blind, but now I see. I see. I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. I'd now like to turn the mic over to my middle brother, I always refer to him as Mark McCombs.
I'm the middle brother, but Doug was my older brother because he was my hero. He is my hero. He's my inspiration. He saved my life in many ways, saves my life in many ways. And it's, I think, part of his uniqueness that one of the ways he saves my life is when he says, "Hey, fucknut." Another way he saves my life is when he plays Little Wing. He played Little Wing at my wedding on a guitar he'd never seen before. He played Amazing Grace at our father's funeral when I could barely breathe. And if you've heard him play Red House, holy fuck. He's not just this otherworldly musician. He gives to everybody he meets. I'm a math teacher. People usually step away from me when I say that. But part of why I think I'm a good math teacher is because Doug is my brother, and I see him play guitar. His grace and generosity and patience as he communicates with his guitar, through his guitar, is what I aspire to when I teach. There are moments when I have a good day teaching where I think maybe this is 1/bazillionth of what it feels like to play the guitar like Doug plays the guitar. Doug is part of my teaching in a more prosaic way, I guess. As Kirk mentioned, for the last few years, Doug has worked with Chris Murphy, who, if you don't know Chris Murphy, you need to know Chris Murphy, because he is he found Doug when Doug was broken, and Doug found him when Doug was broken. And Doug isn't broken anymore. But part of what Doug did with Chris, as Kirk mentioned, is he did customer support. Another way Doug inspires me is with his mastery of sarcasm. I especially like it when it's directed at me, but one of the classes I teach, we talk about how many different combinations can a set of numbers or characters take. And the example I always use, first example I always use, is if you have a set of 26 letters and 10 digits, and you need a 15-character password, how many different versions of that password can you create? And here's an example. My brother, Doug, works software support. He got a call from a customer saying, my disk doesn't work. And Doug said, okay, well, I'll do my best to help you out. Have you installed the disk? Well, I've tried. Did you type in the key code? I've tried. So he said, okay, well, let me walk you through that. It's 15 characters, letters, and numbers. There are no O's. Anything that's round, you don't want to type an O, you want to type a 0. If you type an O, it won't work. Don't type an O. Everything that's round is a 0. And the customer said, but 0 has an O in it. And Doug said to me, moron's got 2 in it. But he didn't say that to the customer. He helped the customer. another great joy in my life has been Doug would send me music that he had written and recorded at home and say, Mark, will you please try to put this to video? And I would say, okay, well, what do you have in mind? And he would say, yeah, I trust you. And so I would listen to the music and listen to him and listen to the music and listen to him through the music and put something together, and I would send it to him, and I would say, now if you don't like it, you're not going to hurt my feelings. And he never said, I don't like it. One of the greatest joys of my life is when he would say, okay, I can't wait to post that, and I'll send you another song. I call him all the time, or text him or whatever, and say, I know your work. I know you're busy. I know you're probably watching wrestling, so you don't have to say anything back. But I just want to let you know, I just watched you burn Austin to the ground playing Hey Joe with Texas Crude again. And I just want to say thank you. And I love you. And he would invariably say, yeah, but, there's parts of that song where I don't think it's really that good. And I'm not a guitarist, but I would say, actually, you're wrong. But this has been a hard week. I know it's hard for all of you. It's hard for all of us. I also want to thank the folks at here at Old Town Bar. I want to thank Kenny and Holly and Phil. Doug is who he is in part because of all of you. I'm certainly who I am in large part because of Doug. Another thing that he and I did in recent years is I would keep saying to him, okay, when are we going to put your CD together? When are we going to put your CD together? I know the name, and he would say, well, it's going to be D equals MC squared, A Brief History of Tone. Because Doug also wanted to go back to school and study physics and astronomy. He loved Stephen Hawking, and he would say, I want to play the guitar like Stephen Hawking does physics. So I would play around with trying to create some artwork for his CD cover, and we would sort of write liner notes together. But tone, I'm not a musician, but thanks to Doug, I know what tone is. And when I watch and listen to Miles play, I know what tone is. And Doug said, well, okay, yeah, let's call it D equals MC squared, A Brief History of Tone. And I know something else I'd like to have in the liner notes is a quote from Miles Davis I'd like to have in there. And I said, okay, send it to me. And forgive me if I don't read this very well. So I've practiced my tone for almost 50 years. Doug is 52. If I can't hear my tone, I can't play. If I can't play, then I won't get paid. If I don't get paid, then I lose the house. It's like a chain reaction. If I lose my tone, I can't fuck. I can't make love. Can't do nothing. I'll just walk into the ocean and die if I lose my tone. That's Miles Davis. Doug didn't care about stuff. If he couldn't fit in his truck, he didn't need it. If you wanted it, he didn't need it. He cared about his tone, and I don't think just guitar tone. Doug's tone is love and generosity and kindness and loyalty and strength. I have a master's degree in math. I teach math. I am supposed to be able to understand the logic, I guess, of things. I haven't been able to resolve the paradox, but I don't want to, because it's a wonderful paradox. That this person, Doug McCombs, is at the same time a tender soul and a bad motherfucker. And he knew it. But he didn't, well, he knew it. A friend of mine told me once, Mark, when you start talking, it's kind of like falling off a cliff. We're probably going to hit sometime, not sure when. And Doug would say, yeah, fuck nut. But I'm going to stop. And I'm just... Miles, I love you. Doug, I love you.
Well, we're here to celebrate Doug. We just heard from Mark. And at this time, I'd like to invite Mark Douglas to come and say a few words about his uncle.
I'm really excited to meet so many of you tonight because, like me, you are all at least incredibly impacted by this guy we call Doug. He was easily one of the most badass uncles that you could have asked for in life. He taught me and my brother what being a rock star was all about, and he changed us permanently. He taught us things that nobody else could. Miles, Kevin, and I went to his place last night with 3 of his guitars. And one of the first things we had to do was put our ear to the wood and hit every string until there were no more harmonics left, or until all the harmonics really just came through the wood. You don't really know about sound until somebody really comes and shows you what it can do to you. I think that everybody in this room knows that, and probably knows it a whole lot better, because Doug would sit up here and spank and crush these guitars and make faces that nobody else should be able to make. And I'm so happy knowing Miles, because it's just, I see you, man. When we got the news on Wednesday, Mark called my brother Kevin, and Kevin called me, and I was with my dad, and it was easily one of the worst days of my life, because I knew what loss was. We didn't know before. We knew what the blues was. We knew what Doug was playing about. And, you know, I was trying to rack my brain about things to say, because there's just so many. You know, we got to live with him. He came to stay with us. He found me my first real guitar amp. He gave me my first guitar amp before that. Promptly blew out the speakers at the next gig he played with it. One of the things we found in his house, which I don't know if anybody else on the whole planet has a little bag of these. These are completely crushed and destroyed bridge saddles from a Fender Stratocaster. A whole bag of them. Who has that? I mean, just like, and it was just so meaningful, because I knew exactly what the fuck he did to him. He has a signature move that he used to brag about, where after he would get done letting the crowd know that they were mere plebeians by comparison to his godlike talent, he would grab all 6 strings that were, hopefully everybody knows he played a bass string on a guitar for an E string. He would grab all 6 telephone wires and, you know, snap this thing, and all 6 strings would cut through his hands, and the guitar would just fall to the ground, or just like eject from his hands. Like, I don't need these anymore. Thank God he had a string endorsement deal at the time, right? He could afford to restring it. I was so glad that he used to tell me stories about not having money for new strings before the deal, and he would take the strings off and boil them. Big pot of string noodles, and put them back on. And we were trying to figure out why that worked so good, aside from just like, you know, stripping off your dead skin cells from the top of the strings. And it probably has something to do with, you know, all the molecules lining back up in the metal. And we just can't imagine that life. But he lived it, and you heard it with every screaming note. So I can't thank you enough, Doug, for just being there and being awesome, and, you know, being one of my namesakes. I'm so glad to bear Mark and Doug's name. It makes me who I am. You know, our whole family has got its own, every family has their own special nature about it. But we're real lucky to have the 3 brothers, Kirk, Mark, and Doug, and their father was a NASA engineer. And he worked on the Apollo program, which has become incredibly meaningful in our lives. And we get to look around at what he bore in this world. And it's just incredible how, you know, your ancestry can genetically pass down these talents and these skill sets that manifest in ways that can get amplified by the people that are around you and giving you this constant input and feedback we were just my brother and I were so lucky to have Doug at such a pivotal time, like 10 and 14 or younger, coming in there and just teaching us, what do you care about in life? Well, we don't know. Well, you can find something. It was easy with him around. He used to come to the house and get this red Strat out. And I kid you not, my brother and I would be stuck in one position because we would not be physically able to move, just contorted there, feeling what he was playing, stuck with a smile on our face, to the point that we didn't know. We didn't know that people could be that good at anything at the time. And it helps us know that he was so special and part of this group of people who attain such skill and such height. I'm so glad that all of you know what he was capable of. I'm so glad. And I just wish that, we're all going to wish for that one more gig and one more Doug face. I'm so glad to meet you, Holly. It's crazy how much time has passed. And Kevin, why don't you come up here? You're next, dude. So thank you guys for being here. And my name is Mark Douglas McCombs. Very lucky to have had Doug as an uncle and a mentor and a really damn good friend. He taught me that he could crush pool balls with the strings that he played, and he always wanted to make sure that he could make his forearms jump like a Navy sailor. And so I try and make sure that the mine always stay with those, strong abilities because of him. So thanks for that and so much else, Doug. We'll see you soon, man.
I am Kevin McCombs. I am Doug's younger nephew. And I'm also going to talk about Doug as a profound mentor. As Mark said, he's the reason we play guitar. He's the reason I decided to study music in college. He's the reason I decided to try to make something of myself as a musician. And all of that formal training was great, but still the fundamental knowledge that me and Mark and Miles have as musicians comes from things that you can learn from Doug's playing. Of course, Doug was infinitely wise in his satire, his cynicism, and his lighthearted humor. But all you needed to do was see him play, and you could learn so much. From Doug's playing, you could learn humility, because you know that he could roast anyone else on the stage, but he waited his turn. Doug could teach you about the meaning of a word, of a note. When a lot of other guys are trying to play millions at a time, Doug would sit down and roast your ears with a single note. And he would hold it out and pinch out the frequencies and get that feedback and dig in until the entire audience was cooked, and then he'd let them go. And he had everyone in the palm of his hands and his fingers. And you knew that he was controlling just a single note, because that's all he needed to impact people. You could also see how he overcame struggle when you know the fact that he played a bass string as his E string. How in order to get his tone, he had to dig in to tension the likes of which most human hands do not feel. In order to get his tone, he would have to bend up to the high note and struggle through that. And you knew it. You could hear it. You could see it in his face. I know you can all probably see a classic Doug face, and you can hear that note. Maybe a lick of his. And I always like to think that, Doug got Bell's palsy in his face, which caused half of his face to sort of droop down a little bit. But the sort of myth that I would prefer to understand is that one day he dialed in a tone that was just too righteous, consequently melting off half of his own face. And you knew it to be true when he played. And another thing that he taught me and Mark was about the life of a guitar amplifier. And he knew his fair share of amplifiers from life to death, many of them going down in a blaze of glory, some suffering headstocks through the speakers. But one thing that he told us is that a tube amp always sounds its best a couple days before it goes down, a couple minutes before it catches fire. It's never sounded better. And that's something that we've understood about Doug, is that this past year of his life, he expressed that he was physically, mentally, spiritually at his prime. He was killing it. Doug was the man. And I can't help but think that his words ring true, that he never sounded better just before his tubes went out.
Before I introduce the next speaker, my family gives me a really hard, I'm a retired lawyer, trial lawyer. My family gives me a really hard time about telling lawyer stories, but this seems so appropriate to tell one involving Doug. He happened to come down to the courthouse one day when I was trying a case, and basically all I did was strike a jury. We got back to the house that evening and had supper. He finishes and he says, "Kirk, have you ever thought about having a courtroom entrance lick?" And I said, "Well, no, I haven't. What do you got in mind?" And he pulled his guitar out and he gave it a nice lick, and he said, I think of you when you enter a courtroom, this is what I'll be playing on the speakers." I said, "Well, I appreciate the thought and I appreciate the original composition, but I don't believe they'd cotton to that down at their courthouse." But at this time, I would like to introduce Chris Murphy to say a few words about his friend and coworker and employee, Doug McCombs.
Oh, I'm sorry, Doug. This is the only way I'd ever get on this stage. Doug was my friend. He was even more than that. He was my family. He worked with me for 5 years. And we became to know one another very good. And he's shared a lot of stories. And one of them is when I see this guitar up here. This is the one. Doug thought that it would be the coolest thing in the world to take a right-handed Strat body and put a left-handed Strat neck on it. So here he was coming up to play one night with this and says, boy, this is going to really be cool. Puts it on, looks down at it, and there's no dots along the edge staring up at you. What the hell did I do? So he had to run out. If you come up and take a look at this guitar, you can see marks that he had to put on there to play the rest of the gig. That was Doug. That was it. This guitar has gotten thrown out of the back door of a place when somebody told him, you can't play jazz on that guitar. Doug could play jazz on anything. The best story that I can tell about Doug is he came in about a year after he worked with me and was telling me a story about one Christmas where he was really, really short on money. And he was trying to figure out what to do for gifts. And he was sitting around in his apartment, and he was looking. What can I do? And all of a sudden, he saw his little 4-track recorder and a buttload of cassette tapes. So he put down rhythm tracks for Christmas songs, recorded over them, and made a Christmas album. One of the songs on there was My Favorite Things. And so what he did is he wrapped them in brown paper with string and gave them to people. Well, they became the hit of the season. More and more people were wanting one of those cassettes. Well, he ran through his supply of used ones, and he had to start buying more, so it's starting to cost him money now that he didn't plan to do. And anyway, he said, yeah, that was kind of a sad Christmas. Now, I'm going to do a little sidebar here with another story that I tell. The people who are my customers and our customers that Doug talk with are mostly elderly women. And they do things with our software and make gifts. And a lot of times they give the gifts that they make using our software, and they're not accepted really good. Oh, what else is good? And I said, now wait a minute. If you're giving this gift, you're giving the most perfect gift that you can give. There's one thing that we have, and it's the most precious thing that we have, and that's our time on this planet. Once an hour goes, we never get it back. So if you invest your time in developing a skill, and then you take that time and you put it into a gift for somebody, you are giving them a true piece of yourself, the perfect gift. So I thank all you ladies for giving these things right here, even if you don't. And I was telling Doug that story, all of a sudden a smile came across his face. He says, I never thought of it that way. But that was Doug. He always gave of himself. Where it was at work, here on the stage, everywhere. He always gave the perfect gift. So, here's to you, Doug. We'll miss you.
Well, it's my privilege and true honor to give to you Doug's son, Miles.
I don't know if you can tell by looking at me, but we are 100% related. And I didn't really prepare anything because I wasn't exactly sure if I was going to be able to do this or not. But he, not only did he influence me to play guitar, but he built me my first guitar. He took an old Stratocaster that he just had sitting around and stripped it down and painted it like Eddie Van Halen's guitar. And he drove up to Louisiana, where I live, and surprised me for my 14th birthday. And the first thing he told me was, "Now you better not throw this damn thing out the back door." And that's exactly what he did after he said that. He walked to my back door and just tossed it out into the backyard. That's my thing. I do that. And so we liked, of course, we liked to jam together. And this past summer, we got to jam together quite a lot. And I didn't know this until recently, but my Uncle Mark told me that we jammed together one day, and about an hour or so later, he called and was like, I just jammed with Miles for quite a while, and I don't know if I should be happy or pissed, because he's stealing my licks, and he's playing them better than I do. I wrote those. Those are mine. And he never really had to give me a lesson, because I could hear him and see him play, and I could feel it. I can still feel it. And that is by far the most unbelievable feeling that you can ever feel, is picking up a guitar and feeling that the note that he had just got done spanking on it. And I'm so honored to be in a room full of so many people that were influenced by him. And I can't thank you guys enough for showing your love. And I'm really, really glad that I get to see most of you again and get to meet most of you for the first time, because I've heard so many stories. And I'm sad that it's under these circumstances, but I'm really happy that all of you were able to come. I love you too. And as you've heard 7 times, he worked for Chris and helping these old ladies, and we like to joke that, you know, he started helping with the Facebook page and then created his own company and was continuing to help these people until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they loved it. They ate it up. They went nuts for him, and they were his groupies. He finally had groupies, but they were for the wrong profession. Anyway, thank you guys. I'm so glad that all of you were able to make it tonight, and I love all of you, and I love you, Dad.
So I'm Kenny once again. Anyone come up here and say anything they'd like to if they have any special stories. I was Doug's drummer for off and on, and I was Doug's drummer, which is Doug. Doug. For a long time, off and on through 5 different bands, and it was a pleasure, every single one of them. My daughter is Ruby's right there with the red hair. She was not at any of those gigs because it was a while ago. She wasn't allowed to be, but we've had 5 different bands together off and on, and it was, everyone was talking about his amps and how he went through them, and how, his nephews were talking about how they blew up. The best tone was right before they blew up, but it was funny. Half the times those amps were amps that I owned that Doug and I would borrow. I was like, hey, don't blow that up. And it was awesome. He did it every night, and we would laugh. And it was all the time, and it was just one of my favorite things. And we were here at Smith's one night, and we were playing, and he kicked them all over. And he would always do stuff like that. We were playing the Cotton Club with me and Will, and he decided that that's the night he put his headstock through the Marshalls. And, and that's the night I knocked my drums over and almost decapitated our singer. So that's the kind of moments I had with Doug off and on all the time. There was a time in Corpus Christi where him and Phil called the police on me. Because they told the police there was some weirdo riding around on a bicycle. It was me, and they were chasing me. They were laughing. I don't think they really did it, but they took claim for that. That's what Doug did to me all the time. Doug always made me laugh. Doug was always giving. Doug was always the guy. Every time. He was always the most beautiful soul I've ever played with in those kind of moments. And he was... Anytime everything got really heavy, I'd be in the van and I used to have panic attacks in the van. We were talking about that yesterday. And Doug was like, why don't you just shut the fuck up? And I was like, I would have panic attacks. It just would happen. And that's the kind of stuff he did, like he did to his brothers. I knew him well enough that I felt like his brother at times. I felt pretty close to the family, felt close to Miles. And I felt blessed by all that. And I just got to say, I'm going to miss him. We all going to miss him. And we'll be playing together again, He would always call me, too, at 2 o'clock in the morning. I got a new riff. He played over the phone. And he would do that about once every 3 months. Like, check it out. It's like, dude, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I know. Isn't it great? No, I'm sleeping. But send it to me tomorrow. I'd never hear it again. But he would continue to do that. My Doug stories are great. I love the guy. We all love him. We're sorry we lost such a great human being this early. But he's off to better pastures, and he's really playing with Steve Ray Vaughan now, isn't he? I believe he is. He's happy. Love y'all. Thanks.
Actually, I think Stevie's probably opening up for Doug right now. He's probably just kind of stepped out of the way. I got several little things. To start off, I did a record with my brother and Kenny and Steve Taylor and Mike Fandino and a bunch of other people. We were in Kenny's house, and this was 2010, 2011, and we're all playing and we're working on stuff. And Doug walks in, and everybody just kind of like puts their instruments down and everything. And my brother's standing there like, "Who's it?" I'm like, Take your guitar off, please. Seriously, you don't know. And Doug just stopped by. There's so many stories about Doug. The one that just kind of hit me earlier this evening, I called Kenny and I said, man, is there anything, absolutely anything I can do to help tonight? He's like, no. And I went, is there anything I can do? He went, no. And I went, is there anything? Yes, come down and help. So I come down early, and then I meet Miles for the first time, which was like seeing Doug. It was like creepy, I was like, okay. So I tell Doug this story that I tell Miles this story as far as Doug is concerned. We were doing a song called Soul Brothers Sacred, which is a Texas Crew tune. And, great band. We're at Travis Trent's place. I guess it was Travis's place. Is that correct, Kenny? Yep. And we're recording. Well, Kenny had laid his drum tracks, and he was like, I'm out of here. I got to go. Me and Doug are there. Travis shows up. Obviously, it's his house. So we're working on this song, and we're finishing up some stuff. And he gets this phone call, and we can see it through the glass. And he puts it down, and he's like, oh, and we don't know what's going on. And he comes in and says, my album just went platinum. That's his first record that went platinum. And me and Doug were kind of standing there, and he's like, let's go to the Cheetah. And we're like, me and Doug are like, I was like, yeah, okay. Doug was like, no, we're gonna finish this. So we stayed and finished, and I was telling I was telling Miles about that, and I was like, I've played a lot with your dad on and off, amazing man, and I had just uttered skunk butt came out of my mouth, this thing that we did, and he went and did this. Skunk butt. Let me tell you something about skunk butt. If you don't know what skunk butt was, it was ridiculous. It was a let's see how wasted we could get and play Kiss cover tunes. That's basically what skunk butt was. At the Cavern. But Doug was a part of it, and Doug became a part of me, and always was a part of Kenny and anybody else involved. And there were many nights after leaving, and Steve Taylor was there. You know, you get people like Steve Taylor and Mark Donnell, people that show up, guitar players like that, who are just hands down some of the greatest guitar players I've ever been a part of, ever worked around. Those two cats, they show up, they pay, they honor cats like Doug. I mean, he's amazing. He still is amazing. He's not gone. He's just gone somewhere else. He's still here. But he puts that on there. And there were so many nights that Doug would actually end up with me, which was a bad mistake, late at night. And I'm like on anything someone would hand me. And Doug is not, to say the least. And he would sit there all night with me and just, as I'm throwing up stupid ideas, and he would just contribute to it and play guitar and just... He was an amazing guy, man. He still is. He always will be. And he breathes life through every one of us. His son and his nephews. I needed a dictionary to understand half of what these guys were saying. They were so well spoken. And I just love you, Doug. And all these people are here because they love you too. That's it.
Thought I'd say something real quick. I'm Kerry Marchman. I first off was Doug's friend. Second, I was his kind of pseudo guitar tech. Doug pretty much tried to do everything himself, and when he would get stumped on something, then he would bring it to me, and this is kind of the result. So it's kind of scary. But I thought I'd just tell you a couple of quick little things just to give you, I think everybody here knows Doug, but he was such a sweet soul. And when he moved back up here from Florida, my father had just passed away, and I had a house out in Conyers full of my parents' 68 years of accumulation, and Doug needed a place to stay. And he said, man, I really don't have any money right now, and I need a place to stay. And I said, well, Doug, come on. You can come out and stay at my parents' house for, he goes, I'll just, just till I get on my feet, maybe a couple of months or so, and I'll just watch after the place for you. I was like, that's a great idea. That'd be fine. So a year and a half later, he's like, Kerry, I probably should start giving you some rent or something. And I said, no, Doug, it's cool, man. I said, look, I'm going to sell the house, so I want you to come and look through some of my dad's stuff. They were about the same size. And he brought Miles up. And so the three of us, my dad was a clothes horse. I mean, everything he had was like top notch. He had like, 100 suits and slacks and everything. So Doug is just, how Doug liked the plaids. And my dad was a big golfer. So he's like, dude, look at those pants. I got to have those pants. And what size shoes did he wear? 9.5, perfect. So he's taking shoes. He's taking shirts. He's taking everything. He's got my dad's hats. And he's like, oh, my God, I got to get back out playing live again. Because he had a full stage ensemble that he got from my dad's closet, and I was proud to give it to him because those clothes got a new life, and I thought that was really great. And another little quick one to tell you, just to add to Kenny's story about him kicking amps. I was here one night watching Gracie Moon, and I'm standing right about over here. Doug's amp sitting over here on the side of the stage, aiming this way, and it starts cutting in and out. And he starts looking at me, and he's pointing, going, come here, come here. I start walking around to get over to the side of the stage to see if I can see what's going on with his amp. And right before I get to the side, he loses it, and he just goes, boom, and flips the amp over off the back of the stage, flies down onto the ground, and he looks at me and goes, and he reaches over and plugs into the opening act's amp and just keeps on playing. Didn't even faze him. But the other little quick story I wanted to tell, being that I would work on his guitars, I came up here one night, watched Gracie Moon play, and they would always have that little break in the middle where he and Holly would come out here and they would do Little Wing. He did the most unbelievable version of Little Wing I've ever heard in my life, and he's playing this Yamaha acoustic guitar, and it sounded just unearthly. It was amazing, perfectly in tune. Everything about it was fantastic. So the next morning he calls me up and he goes, "Kerry, I gotta bring you my Yamaha. It's not playing quite right." And I was like, "The one you played last night, Little Wing on?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's just not playing quite right." And I was like, "All right, bring it over." He shows up. You could shoot arrows with this guitar. The strings were that far off of the neck of the thing. And I said, "Doug, what the hell happened to this thing?" And he goes, "I don't know." I said, "You played it great last night." And he goes, "Well, it was a little tough, but," and I said, "You're telling me this was the way it was playing when you played that song?" And he goes, "Yeah." He said, I just kind of worked through it." And I was like, "Oh my God." That was Doug McCombs. I mean, the guy didn't care. He made music. And I guarantee you right now, Jimmy and Stevie Ray are going, "Dude, show me that lick again." So I love you, Doug.
Well, what a great time together, remembering a wonderful man. Almost 26 years ago, I had the opportunity to partner with Doug and a couple guys that became a band called Fear Glory. And when I look around the room, man, I share a lot of memories about Doug, and with Doug, with a lot of you incredible people. And this is, can you feel the love in the room? This shows us how fragile and fleeting life is, and how important it is, as somebody already mentioned, to take advantage of the opportunities we have, to cherish one another, to share memories, to share love. And I can say that, so Doug was a little bit older than me. And when I joined the band, I thought about what this last gentleman shared. It was kind of the flip story. I didn't really have a place to live, and Doug said, "Come live with me." And he probably regretted that a little bit, considering, let me just say, Doug saved me from 80s hair metal, which obviously would not have worked out long term for me anyway. No, but truly what I saw in Doug was a big brother that, especially looking back, I didn't realize the gravity of the impact that he was having. Somebody already used the word pivotal. He was truly a pivotal personality in my life at a time where I needed a big brother more than I realized. And to have had the privilege of writing songs and sharing the stage and holding that guitar. So this is, I guess, the funny side of this sadness is some of the pictures that are being posted from those times in that season, which are beyond sentimental and nostalgic. Doug had a huge impact in my life. We blasted onto the scene together here in Atlanta, and clearly he impacted thousands of people. But I'm so thankful for the time we had together in Fear Glory, the shows that we played, the music that we shared together, the songs we wrote. And I've been on the other side of the country for 20 years, and so we've been staying in touch from afar. And it was incredibly hard to watch him go through such a dark, deep valley as life brings our way so often, and to feel so helpless. But to see him rise like a phoenix from the ashes and to return to his true love, and that was music and playing the guitar, warmed my heart from the other side of the country. And to share that he and I were, not secretly, but just, we both knew we were looking at 25 years since the conception of the band. We thought, what could we do? And so what I'm happy to share is that he and I were working on like 15 songs together. Songs that I will now honor him in finishing. and sharing with you guys. His music will truly live on into eternity, and it's anointed. It's affected us. It's changed us. It's brought us together from all sides of the country, from many different walks of life, where we can look around the room and see the impact. And so I thank the good Lord for bringing Doug into my life, for being the friend that I needed. When I look back, I realized that I probably squandered many opportunities of gleaning more wisdom off of him, but just whatever wisdom I was able to glean from him was enough to, let me just say this, because of the platform that his playing took us to, it ultimately led to the opportunity to work with other fine gentlemen like Mark on guitar, Derek Ennis, who ended up being a part of the band. It ultimately introduced me to my wife. And now I have children. So literally, if it were not for Doug in my life, God used him so instrumentally that I would not have the family or the extended family that I see here today. And I will praise God forever for that. So I love you guys.
Howdy. I guess probably nobody here knows me. I'm a friend of Doug's from Knoxville from way back, and here with a couple other friends from Knoxville. We didn't come together, but we drove down. I heard a lot of people saying stuff about Doug's giving, and I want you to know back in about 1985, Doug gave me a guitar lick that I played no less than 7 times last Wednesday. We worked together at a place called Thomas Engineering for a while back in the 80s, and would go hang out and jam at his house. And, I was like writing music, and he said, well, why don't you come over one night and we'll jam. And I took my chord progressions, and, you know how he is. You guys are all musicians probably, and he just fell into all of them like he owned them. Anyway, when I heard about Doug's passing, I was possessed to write a blues song for him. If you can imagine a slow B minor, a vibe kind of like Blue Jean Blues. And I won't go that slow. I'll just read it. Must have been about 85, down on Market Square. I walked by an old dive. There was music in there. The girls were all dancing as the sound filled the air. Then a Strat Cat stepped up and started to wail. He laid back his head and set the mood. One thing's for sure, he could sure play the blues. So I said to myself, make this one your friend. You could learn a thing or two. And so it began. We had a few jams in the small room downstairs. He had it down cold, like a Frigidaire. He moved on down to Georgia, laid down the groove. One thing's for sure, he could sure play the blues. The years moved on, we kind of lost touch. Then I picked up the phone and said, hey man, what's up? I'm still here in Georgia playing the blues. A gentler soul the world never knew. He sent me his music and it was still true. One thing's for sure, he could sure play the blues. The word out of Georgia filled me with woe. The world lost a good man and I hung my head low. I woke up this morning and I started to write, and the words on the paper, they just felt right. Now I'm going down to Georgia. That's what I'll do, because one thing's for sure, I got the doggone blues.